What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 8 college football preview, and we're headed down for a huge bit. It's so important. A Big 12 matchup this weekend going down in Ames, Iowa. It could not only impact the Big 12 title race, but also has college football playoff implications this season, as we have two of the top four teams currently in the Big 12 facing off this Saturday when number 8 Oklahoma State travels to Ames to take on Iowa State. And it's very rare. We actually covered the Oregon game earlier this week. This is the second top 10 team who is an underdog this weekend, as Iowa State is actually a 7-point favorite over the Cowboys this weekend in a game that will kick off at 2:30 p.m. Central Time live on Fox. So make sure to tune in for that. But let's set the stage, man. Talk about some storylines real quick. You have the Cowboys, Oklahoma State, entering this matchup undefeated, finding themselves in the top 10, firmly in the Big 12 race, the college football playoff race, as they have shown their ability to overcome adversity week in and week out, winning close games at all costs. It might not be pretty, but they get a mark in the win column, with 4 of their 6 wins being single-digit wins, and their largest win of the season only being 11 points. Now, Mike Gundy's squad has found a way to win week in and week out, and this game is going to be an important step for this Oklahoma State team in winning their first big title since 2012. Now, looking at the Cyclones, they come into this matchup at 4-2, they haven't met any of their expectations in the preseason. They were they were in the Big 12 championship last year, started out a top 10 team in the country. They're looking for a big win this weekend to really reclaim a spot in the top 25. They had 2 early losses to Baylor and Iowa, but the Cyclones have won 2 straight convincing games over Kansas and Kansas State. And with a win this weekend, really would set themselves up nicely for a chance to get to Dallas for a Big 12 championship appearance for the second year in a row, where they could possibly take on the Sooners for the second year in a row and, avenge that close loss last year in the Big 12 championship game. You look at this series, it has a long history stretching back to 1926, but this didn't become a yearly game until the 60s. But the Cowboys currently lead this series 33-19 with 3 ties, and are on a 2-game win streak and have won 8 of the last 9 games against the Cyclones. So that's the stage. That is where we are in this huge matchup in the Big 12. Let's get to the keys of the game. And these keys of the game are going to be very similar. And I kind of structured this episode a bit differently because I think these teams match up, are almost exact replicas of each other. You have 2 quarterbacks who are inconsistent, but both have shown the ability to win the big game. You have 2 great rushing attacks, 2 very consistent offensive lines, a strong front seven, and secondary that has talent but has not always played up to his potential. So very, very similar teams. So the key for this Oklahoma State team lies directly on the shoulders of the rushing game, because that was really the key last weekend in their comeback win over Texas, as Jalen Warren has emerged as one of the best running backs in this conference, a transfer from Utah State who didn't even see action early in the season. And it was a bunch of injuries starting with LD Brown that really allowed Warren to shine in this offense, while Spencer Sanders, he has to be able to settle in and just be a playmaker. You have to run the ball to set Sanders up to make plays through the air and with his legs, and just let him be the gamer that he is. When this offense is clicking, that is the formula for Oklahoma State. Now, this Cowboys running game has improved throughout the season. They're currently averaging almost 170 yards on the ground per game, but like I said, have fought injuries all season long. But now Warren has emerged as his top running back, over 700 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns, and he is third in the Big 12 in rushing yards. And that's after not even playing really the first 2 weeks of the season. So really and truly, this is only in like 4 or so games of true action, and he has been huge. And they also suffered from a little bit of depth problems at running back due to injury, but Dominic Richardson returned last week, and I expect Richardson now kind of getting back into his groove to be a bigger part of the rotation and maybe take some of the pressure off of Warren on the ground against the solid Iowa State front seven. Now, Sanders, is going to have to be a factor with his legs outside the pocket and when things break down. He's the second leading rusher for this team with over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Sanders' gaming ability, outside when plays break down, when he's kind of just winging it, is where he is best. You can't just keep him contained in the pocket. He's got to get out and just go make plays because that's what he does best. And listen, I understand the running game is important because yes, Spencer Sanders may have not put up the most impressive stats. And I've talked to a few Oklahoma State people on this show. Outside of here, I got a bunch of Oklahoma State guys that I talked to. I know he draws the ire of many Oklahoma State fans at times, but let's just keep it real here on the show, man. Sanders has just found a way to win games, especially this year. And even though it might not be pretty, like I said, when he has to get it delivered, he gets it done, especially this year. Most of all in the second half last week against Texas. He's thrown for almost 1,000 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, 5 picks, and like I said, 3 rushing touchdowns and over 200 yards on the ground. The one thing that's been missing this year, guys, his deep ball has not really been consistent enough. He only has 5 completions on passes attempted 20 plus yards down the field. And so what it does is allow the defense to play underneath, load the box, and that's, I'm sure, going to be one of Iowa State's biggest things to stop Warren and this running attack is load the box. So Sanders has to find his deep passing attack in this game and take some shots. He's only attempted, like 8% of his passes dropbacks this year have been deep threats. The intermediate game, though, is where Sanders has thrived this year. Almost 30% of his throws have been 10 to 19 yards down the field, and he has an 86.4 Pro Football Focus passing grade, his highest of any sort of passing concept. That intermediate route is where he lives. He has 4 touchdowns, over 20 first downs generated, and that's where he's completing over 61% of his passes. Now, this weekend, the biggest thing for Sanders is to avoid turnovers this weekend against a very strong and opportunistic Iowa State defense. This time of possession battle is going to be important with two teams who like to run the ball. It's going to be whose defense doesn't wear down. So Sanders turning the ball over, giving Iowa State more opportunities, shorter fields is going to cost Oklahoma State the game this weekend. So the Cowboys must establish drives on Saturday. Sanders be a playmaker and also protect the football this weekend and rely on Warren to make plays on the ground. Now, the key for the Cyclones also lies in the rushing game. The Cyclones rely on Breece Hall, who led the country in rushing last season, to lead this offense and really take the pressure off of Brock Purdy in this passing game. Now, the Cyclones are averaging close to 190 yards per game, over 5.5 yards per carry this season, and over 2 touchdowns per game on the ground. And it all starts with Hall. He's one of my favorite running backs in the country. I don't think he gets enough respect for what he does. Over 748 yards rushing, 5.6 yards per carry, 10 rushing touchdowns. He's second in the Big 12 in rushing yards, only behind Bijan Robinson, and he's tied first in rushing touchdowns in the Big 12. Now, Hall has been dominant this season off the edge. I was kind of looking at some of how Iowa State likes to run the ball. Off the edge, he has over 380 yards rushing, over 8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and over 17 first downs generated off the edge for Hall, and over 13 explosive runs, 10 or plus yards down the field. So that shows what Hall can do if you let him get outside. He has underrated athleticism and speed. A lot of people don't look at him as an explosive guy. He can make something happen if you let him get off the edge and get out into open space. Now, the run game's important. Brock Purdy is just as important as a key player this weekend because the QB battle this weekend between him and Sanders is going to be which quarterback can avoid turnovers and make those handful of plays to win the game for their team. He's been efficient, over 73% completion percentage, but 1,300 yards passing, 9 touchdowns. The 4 interceptions, though, have killed him, and only 150 rushing yards this year. But along with Sanders, his intermediate passing game has been elite. A 94.1 passing grade over the middle in those intermediate routes with 5 touchdowns, only 1 pick. That's where he's made his money. And also, the play action game is so important for Purdy's production. That's been something Purdy has utilized on over 41% of his dropbacks this season off the play action. He has over 600 yards passing, over 72% completion percentage off the play action, 6 touchdowns, and a 91.9 passing grade. And that is why the rushing game is so important for the Cyclones, because when Hall's eating, it allows Purdy to eat off the play action in that intermediate game where he is most comfortable. So that's what the Cyclones have to establish this weekend. Now, usually for the matchup to watch, I just pick one matchup, but I'm gonna go a more holistic approach this weekend because these teams are so similar. It's the offense and defensive line battle for both of these teams. Whichever team wins the line of scrimmage battle this weekend is going to be in the best spot to come away with a huge Big 12 win this weekend. Now, the Iowa State offensive line has been excellent in paving the way for Hall over the past few weeks, and they've actually been really, really efficient in protecting Brock Purdy in the backfield. This O-line has only allowed 3 sacks, 8 QB hits, and 51 total pressures over their first 6 games of the season, and that's going to be a key for Hall and Purdy this weekend. You look at Trevor Downing at offensive guard, 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, and only 4 total pressures this season. He's the highest graded pass blocker for the Cyclones, and this offensive line has a lot of experience and a lot of talent, and they're going to be key this weekend for the Cyclones. Now, flipping to the defensive side of the ball, they've done a great job against the run, less than 100 yards rushing per game allowed, and they're allowing less than 3 yards per carry this season. Now, they have a lot of experience in key spots on this defense. Now, the front seven has 12 sacks this season, over 50 pressures generated. And it all starts with Will McDonald, the fourth, on the defensive line, who has been so explosive this year. And also, I believe it's Iyoma um, Uwakazurki on the defensive line. They've combined for 8 sacks, 6 QB hits, and 22 pressures this season. These two guys are going to be key. And both of these guys have been game records at times this year. And this weekend, they're going to have to play big against this Cowboys offense. Now, on the other side, Oklahoma State's offensive line has played just as well. They've improved against the run over these past few weeks, and they've given Sanders much more consistent protection than he had last year. That was one of the knocks I had about Oklahoma State last year, is they didn't protect Sanders very well. The Cowboys O-line's only allowed 5 sacks, 14 QB hits, and almost 50 pressures for the season, and also paving the way for Warren's rushing explosion. It starts with two guys. The first guy, Hunter Woodward, at the offensive guard spot for the Cowboys, is the highest graded pass blocker and second highest graded offensive lineman. And Josh Sills at the center spot is the highest graded overall offensive lineman for the Cowboys. These two guys are the leaders of this offensive line. Only 1 combined sack allowed, 4 QB hits, and 10 combined pressures thus far between these two guys. They're going to be key. Both these offensive lines have dominated at times this year. It's going to come down to which offensive line shows up this weekend against two very talented front sevens. Now, the last one here, the defensive line for Oklahoma State, they've played really well, and getting after the quarterback's been their specialty with over 20 sacks this season, 32 quarterback hits, and almost 100 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. The Cowboys have 6 different players, guys, with 2 or more sacks, led by Colin Oliver off the edge, who's the highest graded pass rusher on the D line. And then Israel Antoine on the inside at D tackle has 3 sacks from the middle. He's going to put pressure on the center and guards for Iowa State to go make plays and also pave the way for Hall and protect Purdy. They have some serious pass rushers for this Cowboys defense, along with some really, really efficient linebacking play for both teams, starting with Mike Rose for Iowa State, who is an All-American, and also Harper for Oklahoma State is also probably going to be an All-American this year. So, given all this, man, I think this game is going to come down to the last second. I don't see either team being able to put up a blowout. I think this game is going to come down to the last possession, who makes more mistakes and who can establish the run and make their game plan work and control the pace of the game. But right now, man, I've picked against them every time I've covered them on this podcast, man. So I feel like it's finally time I give them their respect. And I got to I'm going to call them the Mad Hatter, some respect. Somehow Gundy gets this team ready. And even though they could play atrocious for 3 quarters, in the fourth quarter, they find themselves in a position to win, and they do. I have Oklahoma State winning this one with a late field goal or touchdown, 24-21 over Iowa State and Ames this weekend. I think this game is going to be a one-score game from kickoff all the way up until that clock hits zero to end the game. I got the Cowboys 24, the Cyclones 21 in Ames in a big Big 12 matchup. But guys, if you're new, hit that subscribe button, like the video, also share this video. For me, man, I really appreciate all the support. And like I said, subscribe. Daily college football content right here on the Blue Bloods. You aren't going to get this type of content and as much content as you're getting here on any other YouTube channel. So I definitely appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all have a great weekend. Comment your score predictions below. Make sure to subscribe, and I will see y'all tomorrow with some more game previews. But for right now, for the Blue Bloods, we are out.